Welcome to Job. I've lost touch with the numbers, so don't ask for a number count. Today is the 28th of October, so consider that the class number. I want to go by dates for now on because it's just easier instead of remembering what's going on. Okay, I have enough material here to write about a 10-volume set of books. So I got to figure out which style to deliver this in. Who was here last night? Brian, you were here. Pam, you were here. Travis, Shannon were here. So that's missing Jacques and Loretta. All right, I'm going to do a quick review of last night's Mishlei because it's where I want to go for today. All right, man. I wish I could just push a button and just download this to you guys. You know, this is always my fear when I teach with Amnon, when I do my videos. I get preparation, and I hate to give the class because the notes are better than the class. You know, for everyone that complains that it's hard, well, if you knew the notes, you would have a hard time with the class. I wish I could just give you my notes and just call it a day. You know. They put a piece of paper in a disk drive and say, here's the wisdom. Have fun. So the wisdom's in my brain, and now I got to figure out how to give you guys the wisdom. Not always easy to do. So I'm going to go ahead and recap last night, and then I'm going to come into our wrestling's background, right? Call it par or whatever. And then it's really not going to be much of wrestling. Maybe wrestling is just always the, not plus or minus, just kind of like that neutral zone. All right. Second here. Okay. So last night was like this. Last night was... Joseph was unique. There was an established yeshiva in the world from the time of creation. This is effectively what Kabbalah is and nothing else. Kabbalah teaches that there were worlds created before this world and destroyed. The world was empty at that time. And the death of the 7 kings of Edom. You guys know about this? The 7 kings of Edom? Read read in the Torah where Esav is like the I don't know the words in English. A tribe and what is it? It's in Hebrew. It's aloof, right? Thank you, Travis. I figured you'd have that on hand. Chief, very good. Kind of a strange translation. That's how they translate it, though. And you'll see, I think, the last stanza. No, well after by Esav, his progeny. And the Kabbalah teaches there are 7 kings that died. And the last one did not die. His name was Hadar. And his wife was Mehi-Tavel. And that's supposedly the light of the Messiah. It's a lot of things. It's one of those things that's weird when you first hear about it, but the longer you stick around, the more normal it gets. So these are primordial kings hinted at through the Torah. By the time they were all dead, their kingdoms left the earth like an Easter egg hunt. Or what do you call that? Scavenger hunt. Right? Things like buried in the earth. This is based on the verse that Hashem founded the world creation with wisdom. If I said nothing else the rest of tonight, we would be okay. You realize that? If I told you guys Hashem has created the world with wisdom, I really have nothing else to say. Whatever your questions are, whatever your inclinations are, whatever your search is in Torah, your entire essence boils down to that verse. Hashem created the world with wisdom. When do you guys post that verse? Is that it? Travis, yeah, I knew this is you. Can you post the Hebrew? I just want to see it. I want to actually have the aesthetic on my eyeballs. Can you post that for the Hebrew? What do you call it? Like Shem Yazda Aretz B'cha. I never remember how to say. This is why I look everything up. I can't remember how to tie my own shoes. I have to see everything. I'm actually not good at memorizing sources. I just cannot function unless I see it. I have no memorization skills whatsoever. Zero. So therefore, after 7 kings, whatever, it's not even worth the discussion. Hold on, let me see that. That's, yeah, they usually quote it just in the B'chachma, like, is that God's name? Is that supposed to be God's name, the first thing? Yeah, I think it is. So Hashem with Chachma Yasid Aretz. That's usually where they quote that from. I just want to see if I see anything in this verse. Hold on a second. Let's see here, 73, 75, 85, and 95. Interesting. Hashem b'chachma is the gematria Michael, Michael. 101. 161, 171, 175, 375, 376, 476, 466. That's right, 466. I know it was something. So 466 minus 460, 440. Okay. Now, so after the primordial kings, which you can just call it, Hashem created the world ex nihilo, based for all intents and purposes. And this is what's called in Kabbalah, maybe you've heard of it, Pam, maybe not, everybody else, the breaking of the vessels. You guys heard about this? The breaking of the primordial vessels. This is all the same discussion. It's exact same concepts, just different words. This is where people are going to yell, come on, you're conflating terms. No, the Torah is just conflated. Sorry. Torah is not that difficult. Neither is Kabbalah. It's just the Torah has conflated terms. You can call it breaking of the vessels. You can call it breaking of the primordial vessels. You can call it the 7 primordial kings. 7 primordial kings of Edom. Edom is Esav. Esav is Edom. Same thing when we get into Ger Toshav, da-da-da. It's the same thing. Now there are subtle differences, and that there are subtle differences on everything. Right? You can call my name Dave, Davo, David, Devad. I'm going to answer probably each time. Right? If you say, hey, Davo, I'm not going to say, hey, I didn't hear anything. Somebody say something, I didn't hear anything. So Torah is this way. This is how people have to start thinking to get the wisdom of Torah. I don't even know if I'm going to teach Job tonight. I want to talk about wisdom, at least. Right? The wisdom is a natural thing. Stop thinking technically. Just let your mind go and think natural. Whatever natural means to you. Don't worry about what it means to me. Whatever it means to you. The gematria of the name of God, Elohim, is 86. The same gematria as the word for nature in Hebrew, Teva. So God lives in the world. He created the world. He creates his world every day, every moment, all the time, keeps it into being. Now, God is hidden from us. That's called Tzimtzum. He is hidden from us. He makes himself hidden. And when you have wisdom, and you have wisdom, by the way, because the real repair is not to have wisdom. You have wisdom. It's to know that you have wisdom and to not get confused thinking you don't have wisdom and sidetracked from thinking you don't have wisdom. And I'm going to prove to you tonight that you have wisdom. The problem is you're confused when you hear wisdom, you're hearing a word. We have no other word to use because, frankly, I don't think anybody in this room knows. Maybe even that by now we do it for Mishlei, but otherwise that the rest of the world has no idea what Chachma is. If I could stop saying the word wisdom and start saying Chachma, we would have no problems. If I said, all my Ger stuff with just Ger and speaking in Yeshivish Hebrew, we'd have no problems. Right? If I could tell all the people you have a ridiculous Havamina and understanding the Pshat of the Rambam, and the Iker Pshat is not how you Taina the Pshat is. If I could talk like that, people would get the Rambam in Ger. But we can't. Just like, when you speak to me, I don't speak your language. If you can say, can't you just understand how I say it? I can't. I'm not you. So you have to get past the words and get into just wisdom. The problem is no one knows what wisdom is by word and by definition, but in their own language they do. We have to find a code that everybody can relate to wisdom in their own way. And that's what this year is dedicated to do. I'm going to get to it. Don't you worry. So the kings all died, world created. God sets up the creation, let's just call it to the point of Adam and Eve in Garden of Eden, they have a test. By that time, the world, and time is a metaphor. There's no linear time at this point. That's just my jargon. Remember, because words are useless. So again, the wisdom, one definition for you is to stop focusing on my linear progression of words and let the wisdom be heard and not David Katz and David Katz's words. Because David Katz is fooling you. Because I'm in the matrix with you. We have to use a common, that's right, you got to be the Navon, 100%. 100%. If we all knew each other's language, if we had a study group where we could be face to face and learn each other's language, we would have 90% less problems. So God creates the world, Adam and Eve ready to go. The bottom line is the world is loaded. It is so ripe, it's like date honey oozing out of a ripe date. You guys see that metaphor? Give me one or two. Oozing, I mean really shiny, gooey, pearly, sparkling, oozing date honey out of a divinely ripe date. Jacques, you with me on this? Brian? All right. So that's the world that you live in. I'm going to take a side step here. Has everybody heard of the word or concept called science? One or two. Is everybody aware of Einstein and theory of relativity? on some level. Some guy with a wild white hair had some theory about relativity. Is everybody aware that once upon a time they thought the sun revolved around the earth? I'm not saying that's not true. I'm just saying modern science deals with Newton a little differently. Are you guys aware of the fact that these principles are called gravity? One or two? And that gravity is essentially the holy grail to modern physics and science? Are you guys up to speed on that much? And are you aware of the God particle and the CERN Hydrogen Collider in Geneva? You guys aware of this? And that they think they found the God particle, and that the final cornerstone of all physics, according to modern belief, is gravity. Once they lock down the quadrant of gravity, they feel like they'll understand everything. But they don't know what gravity is. No one, me either. No one has really figured out gravity. But we know there's something there, right? There's something, a force, something. Without getting into scientific, just kind of, the ether world, right? Something's going on. So now stop thinking about science for a second. Well, I'm going to tell you what I think it is. Let's call it wisdom. Can we call it wisdom? It's like in the Matrix. Trinity tells Neo it's everywhere. It's all around you. It's all the time. Because it's really God. But I'm not good enough to call God out and say, hey, God, how you doing? So God has made space between me and him, correct? I mean, you're all basically with God, aren't you? And you have the same problem I do. You can't, point your finger at God and say, hey, God, how's it going? But you can understand that there's just space between you and God. Whatever space means, I have no idea. There's a space. You echo out to God, and God hopefully echoes back to you. Now, Kabbalah comes in to explain that God, you can say God created the world, which is an irrelevant topic. That's where scientists get it wrong. What if God recreates the world all the time for the sake of making good to his creation? So let's pick on Pam for a second. This is how Kabbalah works 101. Ready, Pam? There's a Pam creation, and Pam in creation needs flour to make a cake. It's Pam's problem right at this second. Just now her mind said, hey, we forgot to buy flour. I need flour. That's the Pam program in creation. What does God do? Will God send you flour, Pam? Okay. Could it be that I am the agent of God, Pam? Could it be that you called me up and said, Rabbi Katz, I was making this cake. I'm out of cake. Do you happen to know anybody with flour? I said, yeah, Pam. I'm good friends with your next door neighbor. I'll have him send it over. And he sends it over, and you say, hey, that was great. I got my flour. Could that happen? How did you get the flour in the end? How did you get it? Did God give it to you? Did God empower your neighbor to give it to you? Did God empower your neighbor through me? Did my mom empower me to get it to you by giving birth to me? Did her mom empower her? So eventually it all came from God through creation. Am I right? That God is the master of creation. He created the world. Adam sinned, and eventually Pam got her flower. Am I right? So were you in a bad place before you had the flower? You were stuck, weren't you? You had no flower. But now, thank God, Baruch Hashem, Pam got her flower. Let's all give a round of applause for Pam and her flower. So basically, God helped you, didn't he? God helped you out. And did God better his creation? And it's all about you, right, Pam? You got your flower, so God bettered his creation. And did I get a little bit smarter by being able to help you? By being obligated to help you by God, was I a little bit smarter at the end? I had to think about Pam and some empathy and her neighbor. And my mom raised me that way. So did my mom get a little bit smarter for helping Pam get her flower? And Pam made a great cake. And somebody was hungry. And God fed them through the Pam program. So somebody got great food from Pam. And then that person had energy. That's right. Blessings all the way around. God does this all the time for everybody, everything, period. That is creation and God, the God of creation. Remember we talked about in Job, or I think it was in the Mishlei class, the name of God, El Shaddai. I forget if it was Mishlei or this class, where you get your whipping stick. Well, we said that God has mastery over creation as he functions in the creation. So the little flower cake story that we created here, that is the definition of El Shaddai. El being the deity of kindness from outside of creation. Shaddai is literally nature. God embedding himself in creation and putting the name of God together. El Shaddai, God bettering his creation. One or two. King David then gives a metaphor. You know what the problem of the bird is every day? A little bird in the nest. Every day. The bird says, will I get my worm today? I wonder if I'll get my worm. I mean, I like my mom bird. She comes and hovers her wings over my beak. Pretty nice. I popped out of an egg a couple days ago. And I'm in this strange world. I'm really hungry right now. And I don't know about this mom bird thing. Her and dad fly off, and I don't know if they're coming back. They don't seem too worried. So I'm just kind of curious if I'm going to get my worm. Does the bird get his worm on a given ratio of success rate in the world? God delivers the worm to that bird. But guess where the worm came from? You would think that, mama, papa bird are great worm finders, right? They're superior worm finders. But mama and papa bird are bird brains. They're not too smart. God made them that way. They are worried sick, saying, well, Stan, how are we going to make ends meet? Well, Betty, we have to find a worm for little Bobby. And they really are afraid that they're not going to find a worm for their little bird. Because by the laws of nature in the Matrix, there's no worm. You don't just put your beak in the ground and say, hey, look at that. I saved humanity. I found a worm. So how does the parent birds get the worm every day for their little birds? Where does it come from? How does God provide it? No, they don't search. They're not smart enough to search. I'll give you an example of how the birds yesterday got their worm. The story goes like this. See, these birds, they live by a fishing store because about a mile from here, there's a pretty decent lake where you can go fishing. The birds are pretty dumb. They don't know it's a mile away. And nature is dumb. That is the beauty of nature. It's why we eat nature. Its intelligence is not rivaling that of man. Man is intelligent. But they have the same plight as we do. They rely on God just as we do. So two guys were going to go fishing. They had to stop at the store. And they bought a bunch of worms. And one of the guys wasn't too bright. He dropped the can of worms. Can you believe this guy? His friend's going to kill him. How could you drop the worms? We're supposed to go fishing. So now they're in the same boat as the birds. And his friend says, don't worry. I'm a stickle expert worm finder. As a kid, I used to make worm farms. I know where we can find a worm. Come, let's go find a worm. So they're all excited. They're going to go find their worms. And they did. He turned over rocks, this particular type of rock, and there was like a whole thing of worms. But the bird can't turn over a rock that big. So the bird didn't have the opportunity like this guy. But the bird was always hawking this store. He can't get in. And the owner's like, get out of here. Go away. Shoo, shoo, shoo. Lo and behold, the one day it hasn't rained in a long time. And the bird's saying, I'm out of options for worms. It literally was going to be the end. They're dead. But on this day, God brought these kids. They dropped the bag of worms. He's saying, I think I won the Florida State Lottery over here. He says, Betty, come look at this. There's like 1 billion worms here. She says, no. Yes, just sitting here. She says, we got to bring that back to the kids. And they do. They come back. They give the worm to the little baby bird, and his prayers were answered, and God delivered the worm to the baby bird. Is this story realistic? Is this reality? Every day this happens to you, your friends, your family, everything that you do. From every mitzvah you do, everything you say, everything you eat, everything you want is what's called siyata dishmaya, by the help of heaven, or hashgacha pratis, divine intervention. Now you can get rid of God if you want. There's something called idolatry. Idolatry is a little plan in creation to say, you know what, Pam, you probably don't like freaking out about the flour, right? Kind of scary. People are nervous when they're hungry. I'll tell you what I'll do. I will deliver flour to your door every day. You just pay me a nice little wage. You don't have to think about it anymore. I'm in charge of the flour. No catch. But see, now you just siphoned off a little bit of godliness from your life. Now you got to get a job. Now you got to work. Make sure that flour keeps coming. But see, that's a small test. See, now let's say you mortgage off half of your free income, because all these little peddlers are helping you out. That means you have to stay employed. And you can't be worried about not having money. because then I'm not going to give you your flour. And your phone's going to be turned off, and your TV, and we'll take your car. You're trapped. You better believe it. Feeling Job yet? So I'll tell you what. I'm going to give you a job. And I'm going to pay you on time. But there's a price to be paid for that, Pam Rogers. I own you. You come to work on time. I'm going to threaten to fire you. And I will give you your paycheck religiously on time. This is how you trade your free will and wisdom in place of Avodah Zarah idolatry. Now, that little fractal can exist in many, many ways. I'm sure you all have fallen into this trap. We all have. Right? The more you want reliability and not divinity, God, divine providence, to the point where you start to invest your soul in somebody else who has you in mind, you're in trouble. Because now that divine providence is being siphoned off to the other side. And you're not even thinking about the bird and the worm. You're expecting that worm to come, which means you don't even know the concept of where your money came from. So you're basically written off from God. By your own throwing God away from you. What you're saying is, I don't really care how I get the money. Just give me the money. I don't really care. I just want to, flush my toilet. I don't care. I don't care about you or anybody else. Just give me my money. On time. I mean, America is the essence of this culture. I want my food at the restaurant delivered on time. If you say it's going to be a 5-minute wait, it's going to be a 5-minute wait. I don't want to wait anymore. But if just think about that trade-off. What you're saying is you don't care about the wisdom of how God gets to you. Shefa. Shefa is that which comes from God directly. You don't want anything that isn't Shefa. Right? If Shefa is divine bounty. I'll give you an analogy of what Shefa is. Know that word Shefa. Would you rather if you're going to come to my house, I mean, just use your imagination here, and I give you food, would you prefer that you see me cook the food, prepare the food, give you the food? Or what if there was like some shady people at my house and the food just arrived? Then you're starting to think, making trade-off. What are the chances that there's something bad happening to this food? That's why a lot of Jewish people don't eat out in restaurants. They don't trust the kashrut. But look what's happening. If you say, I'm not interested in God and how he gets me stuff. Talk about light sustenance here. Mazel, this is all the definition of mazel. Mazel is God gives you 3 things. Legacy, which is children, family, friends, life, and sustenance. And it's bound by mazel, not by merit. Mazel is the wisdom that you possess and you bring it out and master it so that you can receive from God in a healthy, clear way. Because God creates the world. You're going to get from God. Don't be too humble to say, oh, I don't need from God. Really? You don't need water? You don't need air? You don't need food? You don't need to go to sleep at night? Sure you do. The question is, do you want it to come from God directly? Because you do. Because the alternative is if it doesn't, then you don't know where it comes from. That you don't want. You can use your imagination why that is. So when you say, just give me my money, I don't really care where it comes from, you have denied the wisdom of God of how he is running the world. By definition, that is the Sitra Achra. Because now, the person why would you want to receive from somebody that lets you receive it that way? mean, it's like the older I get, the more I stay away from McDonald's. You know what I'm saying? As a kid, it's like, hey, McDonald's, this is great. I love Big Mac. It is awesome. Now, when I go to Burger Ranch and Roast Pina, I see who's working there. I'm saying, please don't let this be horrible things in my food. Please don't let this be horrible things in my food. Please don't let this be horrible things in my food. And then there's always a mistake at the register. And I have to say, no, I'm sorry, I didn't order that one. I ordered this one. And they're getting upset. It's some 16-year-old kid. They're very, angry at the world. And I'm like, okay, I already now yelled at this girl 3 times. The 4th time, I know they're going to spit in the food. It's just no question. 3-second rule. Something's going to happen. All right, just close your eyes, pinch your nose, eat it, and, go home. It's amazing that we still are alive as a species based on the things that we probably consume on every level. But how can you trust the creation? I don't want some angry kid putting poison in my food. But if you know that it's God giving it to you, then God is giving it to you. Therefore, that you went to McDonald's on the day that the nice kid was working. Lucky you, huh? Let's give a big round of applause for you. Lucky you. You went on the day that the valedictorian kid was working at the Burger Ranch. Then you start to say, wait a second. You know that kid that gave the burger yesterday? He looks a little bit different than the other guys here. A little bit different. Everybody else, this is their life career path. But this kid, he's going somewhere. He's Joseph. That's exactly who Joseph was, wasn't it? And you start to say, maybe there's a Joseph everywhere. So my car breaks down. I go to the garage. How am I going to pick the right car garage? Do I want to just give my car to anybody and say, just fix my car, make the problem go away? Or should I have the wisdom to research and acknowledge and find the Joseph of all car garages? Maybe I should even learn how to fix it myself. Maybe it's a little tiny problem, like we said. Just needs a little screw turned tight. You're starting to get a feel for how wisdom works? For everything you flush your problems away, you're divorcing yourself from God one step. For every step in the direction of wisdom you take, you didn't get one step closer to God. You literally clung to God. It can only get gradually worse, but it can get instantly perfect. It's called tshuva. You can get the world to come with one change in direction. You have wisdom. Everybody has wisdom. But it's to sanctify the wisdom. The more you sanctify wisdom, the search is the wisdom. That's part of the wisdom. The search is knowing how, the wisdom is the search. And if you don't have the wisdom, you got to pray to God. God, give me the right, give me the wisdom. I just don't know about knitting sweaters. Please let me get through this okay. Right, Lorena? God says, okay, Dave, listen, I know you're not in the knitting sweaters. And that's understandable. And Pam will say, go to YouTube. That's always the answer. It is always the answer. Today, it's go to YouTube. It really is. But not everybody remembers. So you have to just pray. Please let the wisdom be here. So the more you can work with God, let God work with you, the idolatry goes out the window, Sintra Achra goes out the window. Basically, everything goes out the window except for you and your relationship with God. So at the end of the day, what is life really about? It's about you and your relationship with God. It's all. It's there even if you don't think it's there. It's what's there. So all you need to really do is work on the Joseph wisdom and store it up, so that you're unshakable. Have enough wisdom in your back pocket that nobody can rattle your cage. Because you're already connected to God. You don't need to look for God and connect to God. You're already connected to God. You just need to be reinforced with your relationship with God. Right? You need to solder it. Keep it there. Now, let's go. Let's just kind of oscillate back to our wrestling theme here. I am a wrestler, was a wrestler, always will be a wrestler. Again, am I a wrestler? 1 or 2. So what was my problem? You understand why now I have a dilemma? Exactly, Travis. I had a major issue as a kid. I'm saying, I know I'm a wrestler, man. I mean, it's my mentality. It's just, you can't tell me I'm not. Now, my ego at 16 said, I'm such a wrestler. That kid over there, he's not a wrestler. But I was just looking at Job, and Job was looking at Job. We were both idiot kids because neither one of us did what we had to do. That's why it's a stupid competition. But one kid in the city, he didn't have this issue. He laughed at all of us. He said, you're all a bunch of idiots. And he's the one that went on to college and win the Olympics and gold medal. We said, wow, if I could have been like him. What was the difference? Didn't put in the work. I wasn't prepared. Like you guys are saying, I didn't practice hard enough. I wasn't committed. Another way of saying, Dave, you had wisdom, you have wisdom, but you didn't know you had the wisdom. Practice is just time to let you realize how much wisdom you have. That's all it is. You need to find a workout partner that'll let you roll around with him for about 6 hours a day. I guarantee you if you do that, you will find out how much wisdom you have. But if you think you're going to put in an hour a day, then you might be like the Vegas table. You might get lucky, You get lucky a couple matches. Maybe you got a real string of luck and you won a couple tournaments. But you were not Joseph. I was watching a video of wrestling today. I was watching these guys, right? I love watching it. It's geschmack. These kids, I was sitting there like, trying to like grab his arm. I was watching the looks on these kids' faces. They were effortless because they're just thinking about what to do. They have like 20 billion things in mind that they can do. Yeah, they're not thinking, they're analyzing. They're just like meditating and going through the progression. I mean, it's second nature. It's like you guys saw how I did last night in Michelet, the research for the books, right? Go to this win, go to that win, go to this win, go to that win. No thought in between stations. Because I'm fluent. And you are all fluent in what you do. That's called wisdom. Every single one of you has wisdom. You know what to do. Brian, do you know what to do in your martial arts? Can I fight you? When I meet you, I want to fight you. Let's fight. How would I do? How would I do? Assuming that I'm not trained in martial arts. I'm a strong guy. I think I'm tough. I think I can take you, Brian. Tell me and prove to me why I'm wrong. I have a big ego. I think you're a little guy. Don't like you very much. I want to win. Prove to me I'm wrong. I'm going to run up and just, punch you. Why? Well, what does training mean? Why can't I believe that I'm going to win? Or why am I delusional for thinking I'm going to win? Okay, so get this. You do it every day. What do I do every day? What do I do every day? No. In our little game here, I convince myself that I do what you do every day. I tell myself, you know, Dave, remember when you were in sophomore in high school and you punched that guy in the nose? Yeah. Remember that? Yeah. 20 years ago, you were awesome. Yeah. 20 years ago, yeah, I was awesome. So when I come to fight you, I'm saying to myself, think about how pathetic this is. I'm saying in my mind, Brian doesn't know what he's doing because I certainly knew more 20 years ago the one time I got lucky. So what's the reality? I'm going to get smacked. Right? Brian's like analyzing, sizing me up, seeing every flaw I have. He's not sitting there thinking about it. It's like, it's like when I used to wrestle, when I did used to wrestle in high school, the non-wrestlers, it was a joke in terms of when, hey, you wrestle, I bet you can't take me down. Really? It's ridiculous. Wrestler just has no problem taking anybody down back then. Because I was trained. And there's always a bigger, more trained person. So imagine what all of you do. Everybody does something. All of you do something well. Loretta, I think I can outsew you. I can outsew you. I'm going to make a better dress than you for Zohari. I promise you. I'm going to watch videos on YouTube. Pam told me to do it. And I'm going to make an amazing dress. So, Loretta, then, do you have wisdom? Do you know what to do when you run out of thread? When the machine backs up? Smaller hole than usual in the needle? Do you know what to do? Okay. So, when I have a problem, I don't know what to do I? I have no idea. I'm stuck. I'm going to be calling Loretta every 2 seconds. So therefore, Loretta knows that she has wisdom. Brian knows he has wisdom. My problem is I do know how to make a sweater because theoretically I can learn it on YouTube. Can I not, Pam Rogers? If I really, really got committed, can I make a great sweater, Loretta? I mean, life commitment. Honest to God truth, I could do it, right? But as long as I don't believe that I have the wisdom in me, it's as if I don't. But as long as I commit, I do. Does everybody have this concept? One or two? So in the wrestling mat, the bottom line is I stunk because I didn't believe in my wisdom. And I didn't hit the mat time, put the work in to bring it out. I didn't go to YouTube for 20 billion hours to do it, correct? The guy that beat me was really not better than me, correct? So the only difference is he committed to that wisdom where I did not, correct? And I wonder what went wrong. And so by looking back, you can look at that kid, or analogously, and you can see the answer is it was just not your thing. You, David Katz, you had other wisdoms that you were doing, and wrestling was just not one of them. There's a lot of things I like to do. I liked to fish as a kid. I have no idea how to fish now. I never put the time in to develop that wisdom. The Yetzer Hara is when you put your time and effort into learning things you shouldn't. And that's called a von. You have a bad habit, bad learning, bad wisdom. Right? You start looking how to commit crime. I know how to pick a pocket, right? Go to a bar, I can get that guy's wallet in 2 seconds. Watch this. Everybody put your money here. I can get that guy's wallet in 5 seconds. You don't want to commit to those kind of crimes. So there's a difference between holy and the mundane. You don't want the mundane wisdom. You don't want to know the Vegas table and gambling. Not worth it. Because then when you start winning, the Sitra Achra says, hey, look at this guy. Let's go hang out with him. Then you're going to get in trouble. So here's the big crown jewel I want to give over now at this moment. We said the world is filled with wisdom, correct? And it's like gravity, right? It's just everywhere. It's the matrix around you, so to speak. It's the space occupying between you and God. And then that which connects you and God, like a circuitry, correct? So that God is basically just elongated. That's called tikkun. When God created the world, he literally, we say he contracted himself, but really he expanded himself. It's an expansion. The expansion allows there to be a contraction. I'll give you an example. Take in your mind, a red dot. You all see a red dot? Imagine if you put your finger in that red dot and smear it in a direction. And imagine that if you smear it, you lose the potency of the redness as you smear. So eventually it becomes white at the very end. You run out of ink. Can you see that? So God is hidden. The red becomes hidden. So an elongation is a contraction. Correct? Now, if our entire reality is God, wisdom, is there anything in this world that isn't wisdom? If you make a mistake, was that, ultimately speaking, is that with wisdom? Yes. Loretta, you made a mistake sewing your sweater. Remember that story? Whatever it is, make it up. One or two. Okay. You did a bad thing, Loretta. You're beating yourself up and saying, oh man, I always do that. That was supposed to be a V-neck and I didn't make it a V-neck, and right? It happens, right, Loretta? Can you salvage it though? Do you have to throw it away and start over, or can you salvage it? So you really didn't mess up, did you? And you made it for me, the sweater. And I yelled at you and I said, Loretta, you're a horrible person. I was waiting for that sweater all week. Man, you're horrible. Are you wrong or are you right? I'm beating you up. I'm giving you a hard time. God is testing you with Musar. You're trapped. It's Job. Whatever it is, I'm trying to confuse you and make you think there's no wisdom. What is the answer of creation? Loretta, are you devoid of wisdom? Do you have wisdom of sewing? One or two. But I'm trying to tell you, you don't have wisdom, right? You're not a good sewer. You never had wisdom. You're no good. So who's right near you? But you made a mistake. Did you make a mistake or not? One or two. So you're not any good. You're horrible. What's the answer? Find the bigger picture. She's not horrible. Look at the big picture. Oh, I'm horrible, right? Look, Loretta has to find the bigger picture. Remember, you're stuck in Job, Loretta. I'm giving you a very hard time. I'm pressuring you. I'm harassing you, making prank phone calls, whatever I got to do. This is where the real power comes in. Number one golden rule, you're never without wisdom. Number two, if it has to be someone's going to be killed, me or Loretta, who gets killed in this situation? Conceptually. That's right. So at the end of the day, ultimately speaking, who's right, me or Loretta? That's right. Loretta is right. Because I'm saying Loretta doesn't have wisdom. That's a false accusation. If I said, Loretta, you said it was going to be done by 3 o'clock, it's now 3 o'clock and it's not done. Was I technically right? Yes. But if I'm technically right and I'm not attacking Loretta's wisdom, then logic would say I'm probably not going to attack Loretta. I'm going to say, okay, Loretta, no problem. I just was checking in. I know you're busy. Let me know when things, Now, I'm in trouble because my mother was waiting for that sweater, and she was going to leave for the airport at 3 o'clock. And she needed the sweater. So I'm going to take it over the head. My mother's going to say, where's my sweater? And I said, Loretta didn't get it done in time. Oh, your friend Loretta, she's horrible. She has this and she's horrible. And you're horrible for hanging out with her. Who's right? Me or Mom? Why? Do I have wisdom? Does Loretta have wisdom? Did I make a wise choice befriending Loretta? So therefore, I have to see the bigger picture. Didn't we say in Job there's natural conflict and you can't avoid it? So conflict exists. It does not mean that we don't have wisdom. It means that we don't believe in our wisdom to the nth degree. If Loretta has absolute faith that she has wisdom in making sweaters, and I have absolute faith in myself of associating with proper sweater makers, are me and Loretta an unshakable bond as per that specific relationship? Therefore, anybody that comes against us will lose. And that person has a wisdom too. So therefore, they don't lose also in relative terms. So now what happens? There's a fight. Me and Loretta are fighting person X. What's the answer? Brian, why did you put your coaster where I don't want it? Same kind of fight. Whoever sees what's going on, whichever team has the most absolute faith in their wisdom, has the task to let the other lacking wisdom person aware that they do in fact have wisdom. And if we all know we have wisdom, then it was just called a misunderstanding. We laugh and we have a beer. Now, change topic. So wisdom is in everyone. We have to affirm it, and it's all the time, everywhere, correct? I'm going to tell you a story. I have a little word that I say in my brain. I call it kalim, which means vessels. You know how when you untangle wires, all your computer tchotchkes, you have a bunch of wires? One or two. Is it not perplexing to the mind when they cling together for no apparent reason? It's like, it's not possible. It is just not possible. So I always yell at myself like, oh, come on, Kalim. It's not possible. There's no way those two wires can be like firmly tight grip. Kalim, as in vessels. It's not magnetism. You know what it is? What is governing the entanglement? It's called wisdom. Brian, is there something called a wire in the world? Is that wire a vessel of wisdom That when I plug my computer into my speakers, it works through wisdom. So can that wire be anything outside of wisdom? So by definition, there are other usages for wires. Is that correct? If I wanted to give an expo about how to tangle wires, would I succeed? Is it possible that I would give an expo on how to entangle wires and suddenly the wires didn't get tangled? Look at that. Wow, I look stupid now. Is that possible? So wires entangle. That's what they do. Is that correct? So it's a wisdom. You're looking at wisdom in motion. Think about that. The only reason why they tangle is because they are bleeding and oozing like that date with wisdom. Now, if you are a master electrician, that wisdom would be pretty valuable, wouldn't it? That means wires are loaded with wisdom. Electrician says, oh, I get more wire work today. Now I'm going to give you a deeper muscle or analogy about how the natural wisdom works like wires. How many of you know what circumcision is? I know it's a little bit gross, but whatever. Do you know, I'm going to tell you how it's done in a very clean metaphor. I know there's women here, but it has to be done. The guy who does circumcision for a baby is called a moil or mohel. He actually has no doctor training. He does not know how to cut. He's not particularly great with his hands. He's not a particularly talented guy. In fact, he's the guy in the yeshiva that couldn't get a job learning as a rabbi, so they told him he'll make money as a mohel, to keep a very cliche understanding. One or two. So why are you entrusting your newborn baby with Uncle Moshe? Any takers? Isn't that kind of a big risk? To put your baby in the hands of Uncle Moshe? Well, he's trained, but I certainly wouldn't want somebody, I want like the top of the top expert of the planet, the universe. I don't want to have some schlumpy Uncle Moshe. Let me explain to you why it's safe and kosher. There's something called a knife. And there are these other tools that they use to prepare the limb. Get this concept. The tool is greater than the man. There's a thing that they use to separate the skin. That tool is so simple. I mean, it's a simple tool. And it does 90% of the work. In the end, it's a very simple procedure. That is called the natural wisdom of the universe. The vessels, the tools are oozing with wisdom that they just work. Do you understand this? One or two. How many of you have seen a Sefer Torah, a Torah scroll script? It looks pretty impressive, doesn't it? Like a calligraphy and dee. You know who becomes scribes in the Orthodox world? You would probably think a scribe is like our version of Mozart, right? One or two. He's not Mozart. It's Uncle Moshe. It's our favorite friend, Uncle Moshe. He's the guy who didn't know how to learn Torah, hung around the shul, and they said, oh, Moshe, why don't you learn how to be a scribe? You can make a parnasa, be a decent mensch. Why is Uncle Moshe able to be a calligrapher, scribe, writing the Sefer Torah? Any takers? What's the tool? The pen. What's special about the pen? The pen just works. It just works. A little bit of training, the pen does 90% of the work. I wouldn't even call it commitment. The pen is that great. Scribes don't put that much commitment into it. Now, if they want to be a great scribe, that's different. If you want to make $100,000 off a Torah scroll, then you better be committed. But I'm talking about a regular scribe. The ink flows. Is there a wisdom to ink, Brian? Is there a wisdom to ink? Is there a mazel, a flow, a shefa to ink? One or two? Just the ink? I just need good ink and I become a Torah scribe? What do you think? Just ink? So the pen, does the pen equal the same greatness as the ink, Brian? So I basically need a Mont Blanc, is what you're saying. I just need a good pen and ink, is all you're saying. I just have to have both, right? Ah, are you saying the parchment, Brian? Are you saying there's wisdom to the parchment? So the Torah prescribes a certain type of animal hide and a certain type of preparation that grabs the ink in a certain way and dries the ink in a certain way. It grips the pen in a certain way, and the pen goes in your hand a certain way. You understand wisdom now, people? Loretta, your sewing machine, is that an accident? Was that an accident? Does it work? Do you see how it's a wisdom? The needle is a certain way, the thread's a certain way, it just works? Isn't it a miracle that you can thread a needle? A little tiny hole. How are you supposed to thread a needle? It's impossible. I mean, to be doing it, I can, if you want to take an hour to do it. How is it you're able to thread a needle, Loretta? Want me to tell you the answer? Well, the tool's already different wisdom, but you can do it by hand, correct? You know why it works? Because thread goes through eyes of needles. Period. Period. When you believe it doesn't, that's when you're getting frustrated, It is a job. Right? It's a job, right? As long as you know going in, Devo, do not fret the needle in the thread. Thread just goes through needles. Do I have to be afraid? You want to see the greatest wisdom of all time? I'm going to show you live the greatest wisdom of all time. You guys ready for some wisdom?
If you get an opportunity to catch a lively little fish, you have to know how to clean it, cut it, and fillet it before you can eat it. But you also might need to have this skill if you want to buy your fish whole, which is another good way to make sure.
I just found this on a search. I have no idea what this is.
You can check for clear
God willing,
eyes
it'll be a good show.
and also pink gills that should look nice and fresh with no slime. This is a black bass, an easy fish to clean and to cook. Once you get your fish home, you want to cut off the dorsal fin, which can be quite prickly, using your kitchen shears. Trim along the spine and discard. You're going to want to trim away all the fins. On both sides of the fish. Leaving the tail intact. Next, we want to trim out the gills. Open the gill flap and using your shears, trim the gills on both sides. And remove them. Next, we want to remove the scales. Holding the fish by its tail, you want to use the spine of your knife to work against the grain of the scales, like this. This can create quite a mess, but it's an easy one to clean up. Another good tool for doing this is the back of a spoon. Once you've removed all your scales, take a wet kitchen towel and clean up your board. Now that we've removed all the scales, we're going to work from the tail all the way down to the head and remove the guts. It's much easier to cut through the skin when the scales are removed. Cut all the way up to the head. Small fish, small guts. See, it wasn't so bad. Now you can rinse your fish under the water, and we're going to begin to fillet.
How cool is that? It was entirely wisdom. There was nothing there that wasn't wisdom. The spoon or the knife is a natural scale remover. The fish is meant to be eaten. The fish is living wisdom, right? It's a living application of wisdom. Why is fish kosher? Because it's a divine thing. That's wisdom. Did you notice that when she cut the gill, wouldn't you be afraid that you know where to cut? You see, the tool could do no wrong. The right tool, the right job, the right intention could do no wrong. It was going to cut exactly right. That's wisdom. Second. So now I'll close with these words. I'll give you something to think about. I wrote a lot of aspects to talk about today. I'm going to probably draw from this inspiration for the next couple weeks. By the way, a lot of this is going to be part of my Torah Hashem class tomorrow. You see how this year's going? This year's going in the same direction on all my stuff. This is where I want to go this year. Ger is this. This is what Ger is. Noahide says, cool, interesting, but I got other things I want to accomplish. The Noahide wants to be recognized by rabbis for validation, blah, 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 blah. The Midrash says God receives Gerim all the time. My job is to make sure that Gerim get to where they got to get to, which means recognized by God, which means they recognize God. Because God recognizes them. God recognizes everybody. My job is to make sure everyone recognizes God, which is a nice way of saying wisdom, which is a nice way of saying if we're not in the Torah itself, there is no wisdom. I'm sorry, the English language does not convey wisdom. It is a matrix. Therefore, if we're going to get into the Torah, then we have to find a USB port. And that port is the word ger. Because ger is not a word that you can translate and articulate. It is a wisdom word. It's a fish. Fish is just wisdom. That's all it is. There's nothing else outside of that fish, and the fish loves being wisdom. Ger is a wisdom port in the Torah. It's that date oozing with date honey. That's what the word ger is in the Torah. It's just a wisdom thing. So people are debating and arguing over ger. That clearly means they don't know what's going on here. So this year, I want to really just get into wisdom. Wisdom is the thing. And like I said, I'll close on this note. And that is a couple of notes. Everything is wisdom. Look at the yellow wrestling man in the picture. Is that wisdom? Why? Why is something so benign as that yellow mat? Why is it wisdom? What I'm thinking about, it's the perfect texture. Your body can get slammed on it. It doesn't decrease mobility or speed. It's a space where it's done. By definition, it's divine space. Exactly right, Travis. Why are the wrestling shoes wisdom? Because they fit the foot, the right grip, right texture, right material to aid the sport, made for the job. Just what isn't beautiful about life? What isn't beautiful? And I finally realized what a perfect wrestler is. It's when he stops being a wrestler. He literally just is divine providence in motion. He turns himself into the immovable object. So it says that Metatron was the power of the staff in the hand of Moses. Midrash in the Zohar teaches this. I was saying, what does that mean? Metatron is in the staff in the hand of Moses. You know what I think it means? What I think it means is when I was in Texas, a study buddy Mike was saying the Yankees make fun of the cowboy boots in Texas. They say, oh, these rednecks are wearing snakeskin cowboy boots. He says, you know what we call them things out here? Klapa kickers. He wasn't joking. Because he told me that they wear cowboy boots because when the rattlesnakes bite, they're going to bite the boot and you're not going to get bit by a rattlesnake. So the guys around America, they're imitating the rednecks in Texas, don't even realize what they're imitating. There's a wisdom of working the land in Texas. He says, you know why we wear a cowboy hat? We call that shade. That's what it's like in Israel. You know, that's wisdom. That is Ger wisdom, and it's real wisdom. So what is Metatron, the staff in the hand of Moses? We call that a pen. Moses wrote the Torah with a pen. So here's the progression. There's three hits. Let's take Moses, for example. You can take Moses, some guy who wrote a book. Is that true? That is not true. Because the Torah was not written by some guy named Moses. Now, number two, can we say that Moses had the divine power in his hand to write a divinely inspired book called the staff, Metatron, pen, blah, blah, blah? Wrong. We already said everybody has wisdom. The repair of the Garden of Eden is knowing you have wisdom. So Moses, knowing that he is imbued with Metatronic power, which shines Sandalphonic energy throughout the universe, realizing that he is united with the divine as he wrote the code of creation called the Torah. Did that happen? Thank you. That is where wisdom's got to get to. Loretta is not just some woman making something. Loretta is not some talented, wise woman making a wise thing. Loretta is a master of wisdom of making the most wise sweaters of all time. That's a fact. Is Pam Rogers just some woman making stuff on the internet? Hey, blah, blah, blah. Ding, ding, ding. Is Pam Rogers a wise woman making wise things happen on the internet? No. Pam Rogers has to know that she is filled with wisdom, doing the most wise things at all the time in everything she does. I hate to use the word branding, but that's what branding really is. But I'm not talking commercial branding. I'm talking about the wisdom of God coming to you, garmenting your entire being, and then you echoing it back into creation because it's the truth. That's what wrestling is. Wrestling is, I am the wrestling master, and you're going to know it, and everyone in this gym is going to know it, and the sports center is going to know it. Now, that's a bit egotistical, but you understand what makes a great wrestler. Even the name resonates. Wow, did you see Dave Katz do that? No one ever said that about me. They were waiting for it to happen. I was waiting for it to happen. It never happened. But somewhere, whatever you do, you are doing that. In something you're doing. You need to just realize when you call that I'm being the Travis program, I'm being the Loretta program, just know the Kabbalah calls it the Chachma program. Turn it into the utmost holiest realm. That's how you shape the universe. All right, that's all I have to say for today. Basically, can you understand how Job works now? The transition is going from I'm a loser nobody with marginal wisdom, and I had a dream once upon a time, and I could have done it, woulda, coulda, shoulda. As opposed to, it was right, here I am. I am here, I'm doing it, this. Confidence, emunah, betachon, wisdom. Leaving the church, in whatever Avodah we come from, everybody has it. Your confidence is shaken. And you're going to get beat up. Whatever it is you're doing, all the Job moment, Morpheus giving the phone to Neo. You know what Neo's answer was to succeed there? I am the Neo. Forget the one. One is Neo with the same word, the same letters scrambled. There's no one. You should have just said, you better believe I'm Neo. And Smith would have just gone away. That's how you beat the Matrix. There's no words that can describe how to get there and do it. You just realize you are doing it. You are it. Noahide is basically just saying, we don't believe that we're it. Ger are the ones that are saying, I don't have to explain it. I can't explain it. I'm not going to explain it. I just am it. That's all there is to it. All right, that's all for today. We'll see where it goes next time. I basically conveyed, let me just see if I conveyed what I want to convey. So let me just run through my list real quick before we hang up. So basically, Joseph yesterday in Mishlei, he realized that he was Joseph. Can I get a 1 or 2 on that? You guys understand it now? He was the wrestler that won. The wrestler everything he does on the mat becomes a real thing. Right? The takedown he does is textbook. It's brilliant. It vibrates. It resonates. The gym feels it. 1 or 2. As opposed to dive in for the legs and hope for the best. This is the Torah of Shem in a nutshell. 1 or 2. Did you guys hear my talk in Texas about Best Buy? Okay. Can you identify the goy that I spoke about? Who's the goy? Dirk. In our analogy. And as for today, who was it? My depiction of Dirk is the guy who doesn't believe in himself. Who was the ger in my analogy? The guy who resonates sandalphonic energy in the universe. He knows he's a ger. He knows he's with God. That's what I didn't know how to explain it back then as I do now. That's right. He's the guy who's prepared. Basically, I'm going into Best Buy and I know what I'm doing. Isn't that the whole difference? As opposed to just save me, save my soul. Just sell me stuff, make me spend money. I don't care if it works or not. I'll give you more money. As opposed to the guy who comes in and says it and does exactly know what he's got to do.